Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean from Proofpoint, excited to be here. And today I want to talk to you about an analytical platform. And it starts with thinking about the person working with your organization and dealing with threat intelligence. So you could be sitting within a, just advancing for me. Oh. So you could be sitting within a cyber threat intelligence team for your company. And as an example, you can be an attack analyst watching over the evolution of a threat's capability to provide timely warning of threats and working with SOARs or SIMs. And along with other data analysis tools, one in particular, we hope you can now leverage is what we call the Nexus People Risk Explorer. And this is a single interface, single pane of glass to quantify and view what we call people-centric security risk. We see it as a single pane of glass, right? And it analyzes data across our products and provides risk insights and recommendations on what you can do now to actually reduce the risk identified. So I want to take a look at this, and I will bring this into view. All right, here we are. First thing that you see here is a Venn diagram, and it illustrates the various ways that we group people. So who represents risk to your organization? And every person that we look at is given a overall risk number, and it's compromised by our attacked, privileged, and vulnerable indices. So I'll explain a little bit more about each of those as I go through the major segmentations associated with each of them. And as I look at this Venn diagram, it's who gets targeted by serious threats, right? So I look at these very attacked people. These are most attacked, high probability folks, trying to gain an indication of who might get attacked in the future. These are people that receive highly targeted, sophisticated, or high volumes of attack. Then we have privileged folks, and these are people at risk that you need to be concerned about that can potentially impact you. So they can access critical systems or sensitive data, or can be a vector for lateral movement. Also, this is based on seniority in the business function or a person with administration access or management. So privilege can indicate the level of damage that could be cast if this account was actually taken over. And then there's, who is likely to fall for threats, right? Vulnerable folks that have a high likelihood to click on malicious content, fail awareness training, or use risky devices or cloud services. It's an indication of that chance that attacks actually could be successful. So phishing, for an example, because these folks are clickers. So we analyze several factors, external ones like attacks, behavioral ones like clickers or not, and levels of privilege, because at the end of the day, what's most interesting is the damage that might take place. And from here, we calculate overall risk. So with that in mind, we can sort that overall risk, as you see here in top targets within the firm. And this list here can be used to prioritize list of security actions. So the next question is applying security controls to a group of people. And the challenge here is really to select the right group of folks, because you're not necessarily going to do that for all 20,000 people. And that's where we've provided additional segmentation. And the result is of this grouping of employees is according to their risk characteristics, right? Remembering the 3 risk scores: attack, privilege, and vulnerable. And where all these converge is our imminent targets, right? And it's probably where you might want to start to apply controls because they really stick out as a sore thumb. But there's other segments that we think are meaningful and important as well. So with those, we see major targets. And here we looked at very attacked and privileged folks and split them. And we did this because from a security team's perspective, they'd like to apply slightly different security controls on major targets versus others. Then we took latent targets, right? These are privileged and vulnerable folks, but not attacked. So they have privilege because of their job or title, but they have not been discovered by an actor, a bad actor potentially. And once that happens, if they've been targeted, they would move to that imminent target group. And that's because they're vulnerable and there's a high chance of account takeover. So think of these people in the latent group, kind of like ticking bombs that you really want to disarm before it actually explodes, and soft targets. So these are very attacked and vulnerable and may be attacked differently. So maybe not targeted attacks, but something more widespread. And they might not have as much privilege, but they still can have a corporate email and can be a backdoor into the organization. So I think the interesting thing about the segmentation is for folks like soft targets who aren't necessarily on the list for security folks because they don't have privilege. And why might you care, but maybe need to? And the latent folks, those aren't attacked, so you might not necessarily know about them, but you should be thinking in regard to what's happening there. So very quickly went through this, but hopefully we understand a little bit about the segmentation and the risk metrics a little bit. And one of the things I wanted to do is, if I can blow this up. All right. Is looking at our top vulnerabilities. Here we go. So if we go back up here and I look at soft targets, for example, I can scroll down and I can look at the top vulnerabilities, and what I see is email and credential leaks, right? I can click into this vulnerability and I can see who's impacted. So I'll pick on Giovanni, for example, go to this person and learn more about his behavior. What I can see in under the vulnerability is that Giovanni is vulnerable because his corporate email and credentials were previously leaked in a public breach. And he's also vulnerable because he didn't complete some awareness training here as well. So that combined, along with a number of other things, gets that overall risk score. And we offer recommendations to reduce risk associated with Giovanni. And one more thing about this vulnerability that we have here, it's linked to our digital risk product, and that integrates with the website that you might have come across. I've been pawned. Definitely need to say and type that correctly. Here you've got my personal email, and yeah, it's ones that participated in 12 breach sites. So we integrate that tool there. And this is, so we have the ability to look at corporate email addresses that may have participated in breaches. And the point is that Giovanni uses corporate email for personal purposes that open that up. And then in terms of other vulnerabilities here, I'll quickly look at these. We have folks like clickers. We define this as a person that clicked once a month and assign them vulnerability. Another one I think is interesting is distribution lists. So if we look at this person here, we can go to that and we can look into that, and we can see that the distribution has a high attack rating, and that's why they are associated with that vulnerability. Then we have a number of vulnerabilities that are tied to security awareness training. This one is phishing simulation, and these folks may have failed a recent campaign, or like Giovanni, skipped it entirely. And once more, we have vulnerabilities that are related to countries, main, common, or rare locations. And if we look at this person, when we click here, we can see that they normally are coming and logging in from Brazil. However, we see that in the past 30 days, they had a click and a login from South Africa, right? So that's where they get that attributed. And this is the location where they log in from, not listed in their Active Directory. So we go back to Giovanni's group, the soft targets, and not only with the individuals, but with these groups, we can see the associated threats, right? And then we can see that also going down, top recommendations. And here's where you would learn how to reduce risks actually related to these people. And it's all in context of these groups. And what's really nifty here, and I know you're all dying for, is attached to this. If you click next to the action, there's a handy place for a solution if you don't have it. But going back here, I think we've talked a lot about individual people, but it's also about looking at the associated risk with the various business functions. And we can drill into that, right? Going back across the top tabs here, business functions, departments, we look at seniority, and here I want to drill down into, say, the executives. And you go down and you can see top vulnerabilities here, and you see training associated with it. So what does a 2 mean, or a 7, or a higher number? And I think that, here, think about risk as a quantification of the amount of attention a security team really needs to pay to a person for some reason. So a very fast flyby. I know we went through this quickly, but you're seeing in action what we fundamentally focused on, which is people-centric security, and putting that into action. And why do we do this? So I go back to our fundamental thinking here, and that is the fact that defenders don't focus on people, attackers do. So Gartner data on security spending clearly shows that firms dedicate time and people and dollars that to activities not mapped to how their attackers are targeting. Attackers consistently use email as the #1 threat vector to launch attacks because it works. The DBR reports 94% of breaches start with attacks targeting people via email, and you blop in insider threat, that's 96%. So if you truly want to mitigate the risk of breach, resources and attention need to shift to focusing on people. I aim to demonstrate that you can gain the ability to understand what these very tech people and titles are in the People Explorer, and the fact that firms aren't just buying or trying to remediate issues for one individual person, they're also concerned with larger groups. So we can put focus here to make the problem smaller. And looking to the future, we think there needs to be a fundamental shift in how we approach cybersecurity strategy, moving from network-centric point of view, you see here on the left, right? And the fact that attackers do not view the world in terms of a network diagram, towards the right, and understanding organizational risk by identifying who are the people at risk and how they represent risk to your organization. And I think for Proofpoint, we really work hard to put a platform and a strategy together, providing true people-centric approach. And that's where customers have asked for more guidance on what it means to evolve their security strategy with that people-centric approach. And it's why we've introduced this People Risk Explorer